President Xi Jinping visits Hong Kong and says the city has risen from the ashes. The state leader visits various places in the city, including the Science Park.
Welcome to TVB News. President Xi Jinping arrived in Hong Kong this afternoon via the high-speed railway. The state leader visited various places before having dinner at Government House with Chief Executive Carrie Lam.
After that, it's understood he will head back to the mainland to spend the night there. Tomorrow, he will come to the city again to attend the inaugural ceremony of the sixth-term SAR government. Sharon Tang reports from the high-speed rail terminal in West Kowloon.
A highly anticipated visit from President Xi Jinping. Last time he was here, it was 2017. On board the Fuxing high-speed train, President Xi arrived at West Kowloon Station at around 3:15 p.m. Xi and his wife Peng Liyuan stepped out of the train together. Among those welcoming them were Chief Executive Carrie Lam and her husband Lam Siu-po, Director of Beijing's Liaison Office in Hong Kong Luo Huining, and Director of the State Council's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office Xia Baolong. Primary students and young people were also there to extend their warm welcome. There were also performances put up by lion dance troupes and the police band. This is the first time the state leader has left the mainland since the COVID-19 pandemic began. Chief Executive Designate John Lee, Vice Chairman of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference Leung Chun-ying, and Chief Justice Andrew Cheung welcomed Xi at the station concourse. The president then took off his mask to deliver a speech. He said he's very happy to visit Hong Kong again and celebrate the exciting anniversary together. He went on to talk about how he has always cared about the people of Hong Kong. Then, some words of encouragement. Hong Kong experienced tumultuous challenges again and again in the past, yet it overcame them one by one, he said. Hong Kong has risen from the ashes and is seeing more opportunities, which is proof that the one country, two systems concept is vibrant and strong, which will ensure the prosperity of Hong Kong. He added that as long as we hold on to that, there will be a brighter future for the SAR undoubtedly. Xi then boarded a car and made his way to the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Centre. Journalists covering the event need to go through security checks. All reporters and camera crew have been registered. The police are now going through everyone's equipment, including ours. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Well, the president's first stop of his city tour today was the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Centre.
That's where he met with government officials, representatives of the disciplined forces, as well as business and community leaders. Caleb Leung has details.
Escorted by police officers, President Xi Jinping went to the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Centre after leaving West Kowloon Station. Chief Executive Carrie Lam, as well as Chief Executive Designate John Lee, followed Xi to the Wan Chai venue. At the Convention and Exhibition Centre, the President, accompanied by Carrie Lam, met with members of the executive, legislative and judicial branches of the government. Participants included Chief Justice Andrew Cheung, Legislative Council President Andrew Leung, as well as non-official members of the Executive Council. Also in attendance were principal officials and permanent secretaries of the SAR government. It is understood that Xi held multiple meeting sessions, including private meetings with Carrie Lam and CPP-CC National Committee Vice Chairman Leung Chun-ying. Xi also met with business and community leaders, as well as representatives of various offices of the central government and Chinese enterprises in Hong Kong, as well as representatives of the disciplined forces. Some participants said the president took photos with them, but did not deliver any remarks. The president then proceeded to the Science Park. Meanwhile, President Xi's wife, Peng Liyuan, visited the Xi Chu Center at the West Kowloon Cultural District and watched the Cantonese opera. There, the First Lady, who was also a folk and opera singer, also interacted with young actors, performance troupe members, and volunteers. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Hong Kong reported 2,358 new COVID cases today, with 162 imported infections.
The city is seeing a rising caseload of new Omicron subvariants, but health officials said there is no evidence that these variants will lead to more severe illnesses. Christy Khan has more.
Today was the second day that Hong Kong recorded more than 2,000 cases this week. Among them, 192 positive infections from some 140 schools. Health officials said a class has been suspended at Fan and Kaohsiung College after 3 students caught COVID in the same class. Additionally, the virus continued to hit residential care homes, with 7 more homes across the city logging 8 positive cases. Health authorities warned transmission of new COVID subvariants is already ongoing in the community, adding that the city recorded 28 suspected BA.4 or BA.5 cases and 8 suspected BA.2.12.1 infections.
BA4 或者 BA5 咧
Scientific evidence currently shows BA4 or BA5. This Omicron new variant higher in transmission than BA1 or BA2 Omicron. But there's no scientific evidence to indicate that they lead to more serious illness or higher chance of death.
Health officials add a vaccination, according to scientific evidence, is still effective against the Omicron subvariants. Meanwhile, 2 COVID-related deaths were reported. Christy Khan, TVB News.
The standby signal number 1 remains in force, but the Hong Kong Observatory said it will consider issuing the strong wind signal number 3 by midnight.
According to the present forecast threat, as Chaba edges gradually closer to the coast of western Guangdong and intensifies slightly, local winds will strengthen gradually tonight. The observatory will issue the strong wind signal number 3 before midnight.
The weather forecaster said the local weather will deteriorate with squally showers and thunderstorms, and the city will continue to have unsettled weather in the next couple of days.
In Macau, the typhoon signal number 1 is in effect. Under the influence of a storm surge and persistent rain, flooding below half a meter is expected to occur between tomorrow morning and Saturday. According to the Macau Meteorological and Geophysical Bureau, the chance of issuing typhoon signal number 3 is relatively high from the early morning to noon tomorrow. Under the influence of the broad circulation of Cheba, its related rain band will start to bring unsettled weather to Macau this evening. The winds will intensify with frequent showers and thunder showers from tomorrow to Sunday. Still ahead on tonight's news, NATO calls Russia the most direct threat to its members and issues a warning about China. In Ukraine, the biggest exchange of prisoners of war since the start of the Russian invasion. And Hong Kong retail sales slightly down last month, year on year.
Welcome back to TVB News. NATO said Russia was the most direct threat to its members and vowed to strengthen support for Ukraine, even though Kyiv criticized it for not doing enough to help it defeat Russia.
The Security Alliance also issued a warning about China. Matthew Bray reports.
This meeting of NATO and like-minded countries culminated in the publishing of its new strategic concept, the once-in-10 years set of goals and priorities. The last such document called Russia a strategic partner. Now Moscow is accused of coercion, subversion and aggression to extend its reach. The NATO chief said that despite the biggest security crisis since World War II, Ukraine could count on the alliance, despite Kyiv seeing its campaign faltering in the east.
Because they are fighting for their independence, but they're also fighting for values which are important for NATO, fundamental for NATO. The sovereignty, the territorial integrity of every nation, and therefore this matters for our security.
Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, though, has criticized NATO's open door policy, saying it did not apply to his country. That is probably because NATO does not want to be drawn into an all-out conflict with Russia. The new document also mentioned China for the first time, warning about its growing military ambitions among a host of other concerns.
China is substantially building up its military forces, including nuclear weapons, bullying its neighbors and threatening Taiwan. China is not our adversary, but we must be clear-eyed about the serious challenges it represents.
The Foreign Ministry in Beijing responded by saying China's cooperation with Russia was normal and criticized NATO for alleged expansion in geography and domains. The United States will step up its military presence in Europe to around 100,000 troops in total. That is an increase of 20,000, but way below the 300,000 stationed there during the Cold War. Matthew Bray, TVB News.
The leaders of America, Japan, and South Korea have met on the sidelines of the NATO summit in Madrid. At their talks, South Korea's new president, Yoon Suk-yeol, warned of the threat to universal values at a time of new conflict, a reference to the war in Ukraine and China's engagement with Russia, a South Korean official said. The three leaders also discussed North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. U.S. President Joe Biden said trilateral cooperation was essential as Pyongyang may soon conduct another nuclear test.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said Moscow would respond in kind if NATO deployed troops and infrastructure to Finland and Sweden when the two Nordics joined the organization. Putin is attending the Caspian summit with the leaders of Azerbaijan, Iran, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan. Putin said it was inevitable that relations with Helsinki and Stockholm would sour. Comments come a day after Turkey lifted its veto over a bid by Finland and Sweden to join NATO. On the subject of Ukraine, Putin said the military intervention, as he calls it, is going as planned, and there is no need to set a deadline to end the war.
Russia today is continuing to press its offensive in eastern Ukraine, but has withdrawn its forces from a key island in the Black Sea.
Meanwhile, a new report from a human rights group says Russia knew it was targeting a building in Mariupol full of civilians seeking shelter back in March this year.
Evidence suggests twin Russian airstrikes deliberately targeted a theater being used as a shelter in the besieged city of Mariupol. That today from a report by rights group Amnesty International. Investigators interviewed 52 survivors and first-hand witnesses.
They saw bodies, remains of bodies, and that's how we can, try to reconstruct. But the truth is that we will never know the truth. We will never get the final figure. And what is more horrifying me is that we will never know the whole names.
The March 16th airstrike devastated the building, leaving an estimated 300 civilians dead. Amnesty said there was no evidence the theater was a base of operations for Ukrainian soldiers, as Russia had claimed. On Wednesday, Ukraine carried out its biggest exchange of prisoners of war since Russia invaded. Ukraine's military intelligence agency said it secured the release of 144 of its soldiers, including dozens who defended Mariupol's Azov Steel Works. Russia today pulled back its forces from a Black Sea island where they have faced relentless Ukrainian attacks. Russia's defense ministry said it withdrew its forces from Snake Island as a goodwill gesture. Indonesian President Joko Widodo has offered to deliver a message from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Widodo, who arrived in Kyiv from Poland by train yesterday, also repeated an invitation for Zelensky to attend a G20 leaders summit in Bali in November. The trip is aimed at rekindling peace talks between Russia and Ukraine and exploring ways to free up exports of grain to global markets. Widodo is set to visit Putin in Moscow later and has said he will urge him to agree to a ceasefire.
A government economist says he expects Hong Kong to see positive economic growth this year. In an interview with TVB, Adolf Leung said that despite the rising inflation rate and disruptions to exports because of the pandemic, he still believes the city will see positive GDP growth if the COVID situation gets under control. He said it is unlikely there will be another round of attacks on the Hong Kong dollar as long as the city maintains its peg to the US dollar.
The city's retail sales last month fell 1.7% year on year. The value of total retail sales in May was provisionally estimated at $29.1 billion. The market, by contrast, had expected an 8.4% rise in the value of sales. Motor vehicles and parts recorded the worst plunge, down more than 30% in sales year on year. Sales in medicine and cosmetics, as well as furniture and fixtures, were down by more than 5%. However, jewelry, watches, and clocks and valuable gift sales saw a 7% increase. A government spokesperson says taking April and May together, there was still a notable year-on-year improvement in retail sales. That's because of the easing of the local epidemic situation and the support of the consumption voucher scheme.
A man was sentenced to 43 months in jail for rioting and violating face covering regulations. 33-year-old Derek Chan admitted to participating in a riot that happened around Tonachi Road and Hennessy Road in Wan Chai on October 6, 2019. He also admitted using a facial covering that was likely to prevent identification when he was at the riot. District Court Judge Lily Wong said the law does not allow serious violent behavior, adding that deterrent sentence was necessary.
Looks a little glum.
Oh yeah, he does look just a tiny bit glum, yes. Anyway, stay dry, enjoy the holiday tomorrow. Don't forget your umbrellas.
Good night.